Lance Norwood had just settled into the cramped command chair of the diplomatic shuttle when the main view panel flickered and revealed his destination. The orbital hub of the Zarnathi Coalition, a sprawling lattice of metal and light suspended over the gas giant Rho Tellus. The hub looked like a spiderweb spun by a geometry-obsessed deity, symmetrical, efficient, and slightly menacing. He adjusted his harness and scratched the head of the Calico cat curled up on his lap. "You ready for this, Pickles?" Pickles blinked slowly, then yawned, exposing a neat row of teeth that had never harmed anything larger than a moth. She smacked her lips and nestled deeper into his coat. The shuttle's AI chimed. "Shuttle entering Zarnathi jurisdiction. Prepare for inspection." Lance straightened. He hadn't come here to negotiate trade routes or battlefield truces. His mission was more peculiar: to clarify a recent misunderstanding that had the potential to torpedo Earth's prospects with the entire coalition. Apparently, the Zarnathi thought Earth's domesticated animals, dogs, cats, parrots, guinea pigs, were dangerous biological weapons. It wasn't entirely their fault. A cargo mishap 3 months earlier had released a crate of ferrets aboard a diplomatic cruiser. The ferrets had chewed through a navigation relay, evaded containment, and terrified a Zarnathi engineer so badly that he'd ejected himself into space without a suit. The incident spiraled into full-scale paranoia, culminating in the Coalition issuing a formal warning labeling Earth pets as aggressive, semi-sentient biohazards. Lance had been selected not because he was a diplomat, but because he was a veterinarian who'd spent a decade working with exotic animals and, crucially, hadn't laughed when told his job was now interstellar pet PR. The shuttle docked with a metallic thunk. The airlock cycled with a hiss and a Zarnathi inspector stepped through. He was tall, with pale, translucent skin and 4 arms folded tightly across his torso. His name, according to the briefing, was Venok. "State your designation," Venok said, scanning the room. "Lance Norwood, Earth representative. I'm here to address the Coalition's concerns over terrestrial fauna." Venok's luminous eyes dropped to Pickles, who had risen and was now stretching languidly. "You brought one of the creatures with you?" "She's part of my demonstration," Lance said. "Her name is Pickles. She's harmless." Pickles meowed at Venok, then walked to the edge of the seat and sat, tail flicking. Venok's upper right hand twitched. "That sound, was that a threat display?" "No." "That's her asking for attention." Venok didn't look convinced. "Follow me. Your containment protocols will be evaluated." Lance carried Pickles as they followed Venok through a series of corridors that smelled faintly of ammonia and ozone. Other Zarnathi observed them through glass partitions, whispering in tones too high-pitched for Lance to make out. A few pointed directly at Pickles, their expressions unreadable. They entered a sterile conference room lined with observation panels. 3 more Zarnathi stood at the far end, each wearing formal sashes. Venok gestured to a seat. "This is the Verification Council," Venok said. "Demonstrate the creature's capabilities." Lance set Pickles on the table. She sat down, glanced around, and then looked up at him expectantly. "Well," Lance said, "Pickles isn't trained to do tricks, but if I may," he took a small packet from his coat and opened it. The scent of salmon treats filled the room. Pickles immediately stood, padded over to him, and meowed again. "This is the extent of her aggression," Lance said and held out a treat. Pickles sniffed it, batted it once with her paw, then delicately took it in her mouth and chewed. One of the council members leaned forward. "She consumes organic matter with precision." "Is this how she dismantled the navigation array?" "No, that was a ferret, and they're very different." Pickles rubbed her head against Lance's hand, then walked across the table to Venok and sat in front of him. Venok stiffened. "Is she preparing to strike?" "No." "I think she likes you." "Why does it make that face?" "She's purring," Lance said. "It's a sign of contentment." Pickles tilted her head and meowed once more. Venok hesitated, then extended a finger. Pickles sniffed it, then licked it. The council seemed frozen in place. "She has applied a secretion to Counselor Venok's digit," one of them said. Saliva, Lance said. It's harmless, she's being affectionate. What is the purpose of this? Behavior, it's how she expresses comfort. She's letting you know she doesn't see you as a threat. There was a long silence. Then one of the counselors said, "This contradicts our reports. The initial analysis stated these creatures were deployed in psychological warfare." "That's a misunderstanding," Lance said. "Cats are pets. They live in our homes. We let them sleep on our beds." An aide entered the room and whispered something to one of the counselors. The counselor frowned and turned to Lance. "There has been an incident," the counselor said. "A containment area was breached. The creature you brought must be returned to its enclosure immediately." Lance stood. "Pickles hasn't left my side." "Not that one," the aide clarified. "A creature from a prior diplomatic visit, one of the canines." Lance stiffened. "What kind?" "Large, brown. Loud, sounds like a Labrador." "Is that a threat classification?" "No, that's a family dog." He followed the aide down a corridor to a small security station. Inside, half a dozen Zarnathi were crowded around a monitor showing a Labrador trotting happily through the halls, tail wagging. A pair of Zarnathi guards stood frozen in front of it, unsure whether to retreat or engage. "He's not dangerous," Lance said. "Just excited." "Explain the tail movement," one guard said. "He's happy." The dog barked once. The guards flinched. "That's a greeting," Lance said quickly. "I need a leash." They handed him a thin cable. Lance stepped into the hallway and whistled. The dog paused, ears perked, then galloped toward him. "Hey, buddy," Lance said, kneeling. "You're causing a lot of interstellar panic." The dog wagged furiously and licked his face. Lance clipped the makeshift leash to the collar and stood. The guards kept a full 10 feet back. "I recommend you create a separate category for companion animals," Lance said. "They're not weapons." "You risked exposure," one officer said. "I'm trying to prevent a diplomatic rift over a misunderstanding." Venok appeared at the end of the hall, Pickles still perched on his shoulder like a smug ornament. "The feline has formed an attachment," he said flatly. "I think you've got a new friend." Venok shifted slightly. "She is not unpleasant." Back in the conference room, the council watched the footage of the dog incident. After a long discussion in a language Lance couldn't parse, they turned back to him. "We will update the classification," the lead counselor said. "Terrestrial companion animals will be designated as Category 7, non-hostile biological adjuncts." "That's a start," Lance said, "but maybe just call them pets." "Very well. We will conduct further studies. The feline will remain for observation." Lance hesitated. "You want to keep Pickles?" Venok stepped forward. "She has adopted me. It would be unwise to separate us." Pickles purred louder. Lance crouched and looked her in the eyes. "You okay with this, girl?" Pickles blinked at him. Then turned and nuzzled Venok's jawline. He stood. "Then I guess she's chosen." As he returned to the shuttle, the dog trotting beside him, Lance glanced back once. Venok was walking down the corridor, Pickles balanced on his shoulder, her tail wrapped around the back of his neck like a scarf. The coalition didn't issue an apology, but they did remove the biohazard label from Earth's animal registry. Within 2 months, a Zarnathi Zoological Institute had requested a pair of guinea pigs for study. By the end of the year, multiple Zarnathi dignitaries had adopted cats and Pickles. She became an ambassador in her own right, known across 3 sectors as the creature that had turned fear into fascination with a single meow. 3 days after Pickles voluntarily defected to the Zarnathi, Lance found himself sitting in a medical observation chamber on the 3rd ring of the Coalition's orbital hub. His left arm was submerged in a transparent gel sleeve that oscillated faintly with a blue shimmer. Across from him stood a 7-foot-tall avian physician with a beak like fractured obsidian and feathers that shifted color with her breathing. Her name tag read Dr. Shilka, though she had already informed him she preferred doctor without the diminutive. "This is the 3rd time your dermal layers have regenerated since the abrasion," she said, tapping something into a holographic panel beside him. "Your species heals with disruptive efficiency." "It's disorienting." You should see what happens when we eat citrus during a cold, Lance said, trying not to grimace as the sleeve contracted. We weaponize vitamin C. That is not comforting, Dr. Shilker replied. He winced as the gel sleeve tightened again around his hand. It's not meant to be. You asked why my skin was peeling. Because you insisted on handling the canine after it had ingested one of our cleaning agents. He ate a floor wipe, Lance said. He's fine. The wipe was infused with ammonium hexatrite. He's still fine. Dr. Shilka turned her head sideways, one eye narrowing. Your resilience is tiring. Tell me about it. A soft chime sounded from the wall and a voice filtered through the intercom. Counselor Vennock and the feline seek entry. Dr. Shilka sighed through her beak. Again, Lance lifted his non-gelled hand. Let him in. I haven't seen Pickles since she ascended to interstellar royalty. The door hissed open. Vennock stepped in, shoulders slightly hunched, as if unsure whether he was interrupting a sacred rite. Pickles clung to his upper shoulder, her tail wrapped around the back of his neck like a living scarf. Lance blinked. She was wearing a tiny, iridescent harness with a badge embedded in the front. Is that official coalition gear? Lance asked. She was awarded the Companion Liaison Emblem, Vennock said. It grants her unrestricted access to all non-military zones. She's a cat. She is also the first terrestrial specimen to elicit voluntary physical contact from a Zarnathi delegate in over 4 centuries. Pickles blinked slowly. She rubbed her face against my cranial ridge during a council meeting, Vennock continued. The others interpreted it as a blessing. 2 have requested similar encounters. Lance rubbed his forehead. So now she's a prophet. Her behaviors are ambiguous but calming. The council is considering a formal study into the therapeutic properties of her presence. Dr. Shilka looked up from her console. I'd advise caution. You've yet to witness the shedding phase. Shedding? Vennock asked. Hair, everywhere, Lance said. You'll find it in your water dispensers, on your robes, inside sealed data modules. I have noticed an increase in particulate strands, Vennock admitted. I assumed it was atmospheric contamination. Welcome to pet ownership. Pickles hopped down from Vennock's shoulder and padded toward Lance. She sat at his feet, tail curling neatly around her front paws. She hasn't forgotten you, Vennock noted. She hasn't forgiven me for not bringing more treats, Lance replied. Pickles meowed once, then jumped onto the examination bench beside him. She sniffed the gel sleeve and licked it experimentally. That is a sterilizing compound, Dr. Shilka warned. She's immune to most things that aren't explicitly poisoned, Lance said. Also, she's an opportunist. That's her entire personality. Vennock observed silently. After a moment, he extended one of his lower arms and reached into a pouch at his hip. He produced a small silver dish, which he set gently beside Pickles. Inside was a cube of something amber and jiggling. She has taken a liking to our nutrient gelatin, Vennock said. We suspect she prefers it to your meat-based offerings. Did you just say my cat went vegan? Technically, the compound is derived from fungal protein. Pickles began eating with laser focus. She's betraying all of feline kind, Lance muttered. Dr. Shilka stepped forward. Your skin has returned to functional elasticity. The gel sleeve can be removed. Lance raised his arm as the gel retracted. Thanks for the slime bath. It's not slime. It's definitely slime. She didn't argue. Instead, she turned to Vennock. The coalition is developing a companion protocol. They want your input. I have submitted 10 behavioral logs, Vennock said. Each one includes timestamps, scent markers, and inferred emotional states. You're writing psychological profiles on a cat. She exhibits complex decision-making patterns and manipulative tendencies. That's called being a cat. She also initiated a standoff with a floor buffer, he added. Did she win? The machine was rerouted. Lance ran a hand through his hair. All right, I'm going to need one thing before I leave this room. Dr. Shilka tilted her head. Request. I want to take a walk with Pickles, just me and her. 1 circuit around the Arboretum ring. Venok hesitated. She may not return to me, she will. She's independent, not disloyal. Dr. Shilka tapped her console. You have 40 minutes before she's scheduled for a neural scan. Venok unclipped the harness and stepped back. If she does not follow you, do not attempt to carry her. She dislikes coercion. I raised her, remember? She has evolved. Lance crouched and whistled. Pickles looked up, blinked, and then leapt to the floor. She trotted toward the door, tail high. The arboretum ring was humid and dimly lit, with bioluminescent vines suspended from the ceiling like ghostly tinsel. Lance walked quietly, Pickles weaving between his legs. You've got an entire alien species wrapped around your paw, he said. They're designing policies around how you purr. Pickles paused, then scratched her ear. You know, I thought I'd be explaining pet care, litter boxes, dental chews. Instead, I'm watching you flirt with galactic diplomats. She batted at a drifting pollen mote. Back on Earth, you used to knock glasses off counters for fun. Now you're a cultural ambassador. Pickles sat in a patch of synthetic moss and began cleaning her paw. A rustle came from behind a fern cluster. Lance turned, expecting another delegate. Instead, a small, quadrupedal creature with a segmented shell emerged. It blinked at them with luminous green eyes, then hissed. Pickles froze. The alien creature hissed again, more aggressively. Lance stepped back. Okay, not a fan of mammals. But Pickles didn't run. She lowered herself into a crouch, eyes locked. Don't do it, Lance whispered. Pickles flicked her tail once, then launched. The two collided in a flurry of limbs and fur and shell. Lance dove forward, expecting screeches, but the only sound was a soft grunt followed by purring. He pulled the foliage aside. Pickles was curled beside the alien, licking its face. The creature emitted a low, vibrating hum. Lance sat back on his heels. What just happened? A voice filtered through the arboretum speakers. Interspecies bonding observed. Initiating Level 2 companion analysis. Pickles licked the creature's shell once more and stretched. You're not just a pet, Lance said slowly. You're a diplomatic accelerant. Pickles closed her eyes and purred louder. He stood, brushing moss from his sleeves. Venok's never going to let you out of his sight again. Pickles didn't move. 40 minutes later, when Lance returned to the medical chamber, Venok was waiting with the harness. Without prompting, Pickles padded over and allowed herself to be clipped back in. She encountered a shelled life form and initiated grooming, Lance said. They bonded. The horticulturists reported elevated flora resonance, Venok replied. We suspect she triggered a mild ecological harmonization. Lance stared at him. She licked a space bug and calmed it. Dr. Shilka entered from another door, holding a small data tablet. The Council has approved the classification of Felis catus as a Class 1 emotive interface entity. Sounds fancy, Lance said. They are now authorized for controlled interspecies exposure events. Venok adjusted the harness. She is scheduled for an empathy calibration seminar tomorrow. She's a cat. She is the future of diplomacy, Venok corrected. As Lance walked back to his shuttle, he passed a group of young Zarnathi trainees clustered around a projection of Pickles sleeping. They were taking notes. He chuckled. You're going to outlive my entire career, Pickles. From somewhere behind him, a soft meow echoed down the corridor. Venok stood motionless in the center of the behavioral analysis chamber, arms folded behind his back. The walls pulsed gently with lavender light, meant to simulate a non-threatening environment according to Zarnathi temperament studies. Across from him, Pickles sat on a circular cushion, grooming one paw with what Venok had learned was either intense focus or total disinterest there was. Apparently, no middle state in feline behavior. Lance sat just outside the observation dome, watching through the transparent barrier with a cup of something that resembled coffee but tasted like warm barley and regret. He hadn't slept well. The Coalition had scheduled Pickles' final evaluation for that afternoon, and if all went well, Earth's entire classification would be downgraded from culturally volatile to eccentric but manageable. I don't think she's going to perform on cue, Lance said to no one in particular. She isn't required to, said a voice beside him. He turned to find Shawl, the Coalition's lead socio-emotive analyst. She was a bioluminescent being composed of soft, overlapping membranes that rippled subtly with color. Her form reminded him of a jellyfish housed in a suit designed by someone who'd never seen a jellyfish. She's simply required to be, Shawl added. In that case, she's nailing it, Lance muttered, watching Pickles flop onto her side like a sentient throw pillow. We've cataloged 73 distinct behaviors since she entered the chamber, Shawl said, tapping a device that projected a glowing spiral of symbols into the air. Each one is being analyzed for emotional resonance. She spent the last 4 minutes staring at the ceiling. Contemplation, Shawl said, or possible prey detection. Either outcome is informative. Pickles rolled onto her back, legs in the air, belly exposed like a trap laid by nature itself. Venok, still standing, didn't move. She's challenging him, Lance said. That's the test. Shawl's glow shifted from greenish-blue to a soft coral. Explain. She's daring him to pet her stomach. It's a trap. Everyone knows it's a trap. If he tries it, she'll bite him. If he doesn't, he fails the trust test. Your species uses duplicity as a bonding mechanism. Not exactly duplicity, Lance said. More like selective entrapment. It's a rite of passage. Fascinating, Shawl said and tapped her device again. Inside the chamber, Venok crouched slowly, keeping his upper arm still. He extended one lower arm very gradually until his fingers hovered just above Pickles' exposed belly. I can't watch, Lance said. Then don't, Shawl replied. Venok's fingers made contact. Gently, he stroked the soft fur. Pickles blinked, her tail twitched, but she didn't move. Lance exhaled. He passed, he said. Then Pickles clamped both front paws around Venok's hand and gave it a quick nip, not hard enough to harm, just enough to make a point. She rolled upright, stretched, and walked away without looking back. She passed too, Lance added. Shawl did not respond. Her glow shifted to a golden hue. Evaluation complete, she said. We'll deliver the results within the hour. Lance stood. What happens if they approve? Your species will be permitted to bring companion animals aboard Coalition installations. Under supervision. And if they don't, then Pickles will remain here indefinitely as a unique specimen. You mean as a prisoner, as an honored research associate? Lance didn't answer. He stepped into the decontamination arch and waited for the green light before entering the chamber. Venok was still crouched, examining his hand. She didn't break the skin, Lance said. I believe it was symbolic, Venok replied. A gesture of dominance tempered by restraint. She's a cat. That's practically a marriage proposal. Venok stood and dusted off his robes. She continues to confound our models. We cannot predict her intentions. Join the club. Pickles walked past them both and sat near the door, tail wrapped neatly. She blinked once, then turned her head toward Lance. I think she wants to leave. She is free to do so, Venok said. She's waiting for you to open the door. Venok hesitated, then stepped forward and pressed the panel. The door hissed open. Pickles walked out, stopped, turned, and looked back. She's checking if you're coming, Lance said. Venok followed. An hour later, they sat in the arboretum again, this time on a low bench beside a stream of filtered mineral water. Pickles lay stretched between them, her back pressed against the warm metal of the bench and one paw dangling into the air. She's been quiet, Lance said. She's asleep. No, her ears are still twitching. Does that mean something? She's pretending not to listen. A soft chime sounded from Venok's wrist console. He tapped it and a small holographic document unfurled in front of them. The council's decision, he said. Lance leaned closer. Well, Earth's companion species have been reclassified. Category 1, non-strategic emotional entities. That's a win, right? It means your pets are now considered neither threats nor tools. Merely. Expressive. I'll take it. Pickles stretched, yawned, and promptly fell off the bench without waking up. She landed with a soft thud, rolled once, and resumed sleeping against the base of the bench. She has no dignity, Lance said. She has no need for it, Venok replied. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the hum of circulating air and the soft burble of the synthetic stream. Eventually, Venok spoke again. "Would you like to keep her?" Lance looked down at Pickles. "She's made it pretty clear where she wants to be. She causes chaos. She creates understanding." Venok nodded. "Then she belongs here." Lance stood and stretched. "I should get back to the shuttle. There's a cargo manifest waiting for me with 24 guinea pigs and a parrot that mimics emergency sirens. You're exporting more." They requested enrichment species for long-term morale. "Will they all be like her?" "None of them will," Lance said. "But that's probably for the best." As he walked away, Pickles opened one eye, watched him go, then closed it again. Venok remained seated, gazing down at her with a faint expression of something that might have been affection. Later that evening, a coalition bulletin was issued across 6 systems, featuring a short visual of Pickles grooming herself beside a sleeping Zarnathi child. The caption read, "Cross-species harmony, initiatives in progress." Lance didn't see it until he was halfway back to Earth. When he did, he laughed once, then closed the console and leaned back in his seat. She'd done it. And she hadn't even needed to stand up.